Good evening and welcome everyone to the Unity Chamber Music Series. I'm Heidi Ruley, Executive Director of the Unity Temple Restoration Foundation. In case you're not familiar with our organization, Unity Temple Restoration Foundation's mission is to restore and preserve Frank Lloyd Wright's Unity Temple, part of a UNESCO World Heritage Site, and to provide educational and artistic public programming. As Unity Temple remains closed to the public due to health and safety precautions, we are thrilled to continue with our Unity Chamber Music Series in this virtual format. The Avalon String Quartet is the second in our series this year. Our next concert will be a holiday-themed performance on December 12th, featuring Duo Diorama, who just happened to be the artistic directors for our Chamber series. That concert will be available for registration on our website at utrf.org. Our format this evening will be a brief introduction with the quartet, then the 35-minute concert, followed by audience question and answer with the musicians. At any time during the event, please enter your questions in the chat to be addressed during the Q&A. Also, please make sure to keep your audio muted and your video turned off for the remainder of the program. A recorded version of this event will be available for viewing for 48 hours. You will receive a link to the performance later this evening. I'd like to take a quick moment to remind you that the Unity Temple Restoration documentary is currently available to stream through November 15th. All of the information and registration is available at unitytemplefilm.com. Thank you very much for your support of Unity Temple Restoration Foundation and the Avalon String Quartet. And now I will turn it over to the Chamber Series Artistic Directors, Winston Choi and Ming-Hwan Xu.
Good evening, everybody. Please let's welcome the Chicago-based, world-renowned Avalon String Quartet. Having established itself as one of the country's leading chamber music ensemble, the Avalon String Quartet has been concertizing throughout the U.S. and abroad since 1995. They also hold full-time teaching positions at the Northern Illinois University. If you want to read more about Avalon, we put their website in the chat box, as well as tonight's program. Now we would like to introduce you to the quartet members, violinists Blaise Macnia, Marie Wang, violist Anthony Devois, and cellist Chen Hao Li. Winston and I have personally known all of you for quite some time. We were also privileged to work with some of you over the years, as well as bumping into you in the parks and the neighborhoods with our kids.
So you have recorded just a few days ago at the Unity Temple brilliant performances of both the works on this program tonight, which you will, as Ming-Hwan mentioned, everybody can find typed out in the chat box. The Beethoven is a notorious piece. It's such an amazing achievement, and we're so delighted. This is for our listening and viewing audience. It's rare, truly, to get such an outstanding performance of this piece to be experienced live, and it's a special thrill to be able to witness this video performance of it. So I'd like to turn it over to musicians to talk a little bit about both pieces that they'll be playing tonight.
Sure. Winston, which piece are we starting with?
The Beethoven is first.
Beethoven's first, okay. Great, so this is a fascinating piece. It's timely because this is a big Beethoven year. It feels like it's been mostly interrupted by the pandemic situation going on, but of course, this is kind of the organizing principle this year for musicians all over the world as we celebrating Beethoven's 250th birthday. He was born in 1770. And of course, Beethoven is the most important composer to the string quartet repertoire. This particular piece that we're performing this evening is fascinating and unique. It started out as the final movement of a larger string quartet, the Opus 130 string quartet, which is one of Beethoven's last works written in the last couple of years of his life. And it's a big 7-movement string quartet, which was unheard of at the time, concluding with this raucous, unwieldy fugue movement. And so Beethoven sent this score to his publisher, and the publisher looked at it and said, you know, this is a fascinating piece, but this last movement is not going to fly. You need to write an alternate finale for this. And of course, Beethoven was not one to roll over for somebody else's demands, but in this rare case, he was willing to produce an alternate finale to the Opus 130 string quartet. And the agreement was that the publisher would publish the fugue movement as its own separate piece. So now the Great Fugue, as we call it nowadays, stands alone. Actually, it can still be performed as the last movement of this bigger quartet, but it can also stand alone as its own piece, the Great Fugue, Opus 133. So that's the version that we're playing of it tonight. It's one of, at least it starts out as one of the rudest pieces of music ever written. It's just noisy and cacophonous. And if you're listening to it expecting 19th century conventions of harmony, of music, of what, what a string quartet ought to sound like, you might be kind of puzzled to hear something that sounds very modernist, very 20th century, very dissonant, very discordant, very, just kind of a sprawling and disorienting piece. And we wanted to play this piece on this concert paired with the Florence Price work later on, because that piece is also all about the idea of counterpoint, which in music has to do with the idea of independent voices coexisting and bouncing off of each other, interacting with each other. So the theme of counterpoint is running all the way through this program. And working on these two pieces together, it occurred to me how central this idea of argumentation and just kind of organized chaos, how central that is to the whole idea of counterpoint and the way these two composers both approach counterpoint that way. And you'll hear that most evidently in the Beethoven.
Yeah, just to add a few points to what Tony just said, the Opus 130 Quartet, which is the quartet which had the grosso fugue as the final movement, uses a lot of earlier forms, Baroque or classical forms. And he tried to stretch the limit on all of these forms in that piece, but then he really went out of his way in the fugue. And so really it's stretching that form to in an unbelievable way, really an extraordinary way. And that one of the challenges about playing this piece, I think, is that on one hand, you want to hear the clarity of the counterpoints, and you want to hear where the subjects are and so on. But on the other hand, it's such a powerful piece, and he really writes dynamics below fortissimo, except for specific passages. And you have to find a way to balance the kind of intensity of expression and the kind of rudeness of the writing with still having a coherent dialogue between the parts. And I think that's a fascinating aspect of this piece. And interestingly, working on the Florence Price, there are moments in our counterpoint which are either very clear, where you have one voice that's clearly articulated as a main voice, and you want to keep that clarity in the voicing. And in other moments where it kind of goes crazy, and in some ways it's reminiscent of jazz or like a different forms, where everybody just sounds like they are freely improvising these counterpoint parts against each other, and that's a fascinating aspect of this piece. She is, I think, a major composer of the early 20th century, hasn't been recognized that much until recently, being a female African-American composer. And in this piece, this piece particularly was not discovered until recently, because there was a stack of her music that was in St. Anne, Illinois, so in our area, that was discovered in 2009, I think. And there were all these manuscripts. And this piece just came to light recently. And it's, I think, different from the rest of her writing in that it's really original, and she's trying new things, being very creative.
Well, it's wonderful that you guys are bringing these two pieces, because we have actually a group of students tonight here joining us, and they are from Chicago College of Performing Arts, where we both teach at Roosevelt University. And this group of students actually are currently working on Grosse Fugue. So there's going to be a question and answer session if any of the students have questions for you guys. So please stay around, and we'll talk more about the piece and also about Price. So I was doing a research about her, that it turned out that she went to actually Chicago College, Musical College. That's actually CCPA. Back then it was a different name. So this group of students are from the school that actually Lawrence Price studied.
So we are about to screen share the performance, and right now I'm entering the chat box the YouTube link in case anybody is having problems with the clarity of the broadcast. They can click on this link separately and watch it, but we will start screen sharing, And we'd ask everybody to mute themselves, and please join us after the performance for a Q&A. Bravo.
Bravo. Absolutely amazing, guys.
Stunning.
Stunning, really. Wonderful, wonderful playing. Thank you.
We'd like to invite, at this point, our audiences to feel free to turn on your videos and take advantage of the chat box to ask some questions. But we thought we would get it started. But first of all, such exquisite playing. We can hear your experience, your expertise, how much you love performing together as a group. And we all know that playing together as a quartet is perhaps one of the most difficult forms of classical chamber music. The kind of commitment it takes to be able to blend your sounds and to have such unity in your approach, yet you're all such marvelous individual musicians as well. So that's really kudos to you. It's really fantastic.
Absolutely. They say playing the quartet is like being in a marriage. We know Blaise and Marie, you guys are in a marriage, but in your case, it's like you guys and plus 2 more people, right?
Yeah.
So, as a string player myself, I know being a quartet is probably one of the most satisfying, rewarding careers for string players, and also one of the most challenging. So how do you guys work so well together and support each other while working out each other's differences as well? Do you always get along?
Mhm.
Who's going to take that first? No, of course we don't always agree on everything and get along in every way. I think for all of us, it always comes back to the music and wanting to feel at heart like, what we are doing is kind of guided by serving the music as best we can. And, everyone brings their own personality and their own biases and their own bad days into rehearsal and into performance, and the bottom line is you just have to find a way to work through that and to always bring it back to kind of the fundamental of what you're trying to do with making the music come to life. And yeah, I think for all of us it's just about the repertoire and about the serving the music that we admire so much and that we feel really privileged to play.
It's really important to, I think we all respect each other. And then, I think for me personally, the biggest thing is I'm learning all the time from these guys. So it's great to be at rehearsals where you can take home something that you didn't know before. And that's what I look forward to whenever we have rehearsals, especially now. We don't have a lot of rehearsals because of COVID.
Absolutely. That's actually our very next question, is that how have you guys been during this time? And did you stop rehearsing for a while when March came? And when did you go back to rehearse? I mean, did you rehearse much? And did you have to get tested before you see each other? I mean, what was the rules for the quartet?
We didn't play between March and August, late August.
Yep.
Between March and late August, we didn't play at all together. And then we've been on a very limited schedule. And when we played for the first time together again, surprisingly, it still felt very familiar, which I thought we'd feel, like complete strangers. But we played much further apart from each other, and we have had little time together because of the complexities of the schedule now, with the children working from home, everything being different. Yeah, it's like for anybody else, it's changed everything.
That's right. All of you guys have small children, just like ours too. I mean, they're not here, but they're around. So
one of the first questions that has come up in the chat box: how did you come across the Florence Price piece?
We were looking for more diversity in our repertoire originally. I think that's how it started. And these pieces, the weird thing is I don't even remember exactly how we came across them. Does anybody remember how?
No, I'm trying to think myself and I can't exactly remember. I do remember reading an article from the New Yorker magazine by Alex Ross right around the time that we started to be aware of the existence of this piece, which goes into the details of Florence Price's life and career, and then how she kind of slipped into obscurity around the decades after she passed away. And then this trove of music was relatively recently, rediscovered. A couple of boxes worth of her belongings in an abandoned house that I think belonged to her daughter. And some of this stuff is starting to be published and performed and recorded. And I think Blaise just kind of sought out the people who were working on preparing these scores for performance, and had a couple of pieces sent to us, and we tried a handful of things, and this felt like the most ready to perform this set of pieces. So we first learned this piece 2 or 3 years ago, and that was right around the time that we started to be aware of the resurgence of her music. So if you look up Alex Ross's article about her, it gives really interesting background on her, and shows right around the time that musicians were starting to, she was starting to appear on our radar much more.
There's actually in the library in Arkansas, there is her complete manuscripts are there, and I actually ordered a bunch of her manuscripts, and we were looking into some other pieces as well, which are quite nice, and we may perform them eventually. We will perform actually our second quartet later this year. We're going to learn it.
That's wonderful. It's such a beautiful piece. I enjoyed it so much, and I didn't know this piece before. It makes me want to learn it someday.
Yeah, and there are a lot of
Thank
violin
you for-
pieces as well. There are a lot of other pieces. Some of them are more traditional. I think this is a later piece. The earlier stuff is more like Dvorak or more romantic the whole way through.
We have one more question. So I have a question about the Beethoven specifically. Are there ways you would suggest tackling it differently in the context of a chamber orchestra versus as a quartet? This is from one of the students from CCPA, and they are, as I mentioned to you guys earlier, that there's about 11 students are in this group right now, so they're doing it as a chamber orchestra version of the fugue.
And is that conducted or not conducted?
It is unconducted, and this is actually done remotely as well. So none of them will actually work with each other in the same room. So this is all going to be recorded. So we create
from at least three different continents, the students.
So it's going to be a magical experience.
So that adds a handful of challenges that we don't have any personal experience with as far as this piece goes. We're getting to know some of these techniques along with you guys as far as learning music remotely and preparing music remotely and bringing it together. The fugue, I don't know. I think you guys you have an opportunity to dig into your own individual part, maybe even more than you could in a live quartet setting, just because when I'm playing this piece, I feel like I can just never turn my ears off for a second. Like, I have to constantly stay more aware of what I'm hearing around me than I am aware of what I am doing myself. And maybe that's true for all pieces that we play, but it's particularly acute with this piece. So I don't know, maybe in some way having the liberty of sort of piecing it together, in a more isolated way, the way you are forced to do, with this kind of distance preparation, that might actually give you an opportunity to feel even more sort of liberated within your own part, if that makes sense. I don't know, it's hard to describe, but what you are doing, this is basically uncharted territory. So you guys, will come ask you how it went after it's a hope to learn some of this from you.
You might be able to do some interesting textural things with chamber orchestra, such as the pianissimo sections. You could probably play much more flautando, get a very different sound, which is harder to do when you're playing in a quartet. So you might get some interesting qualities that way out of the piece.
I think both are excellent points. And Tony was saying about, learning your part more in depth, in which they're actually experiencing it during coaching, because when they play, they're playing one person at a time and all the other people are muted. So it's like a excerpt audition every single coaching. And if it were me, it would be stressful. And I also bless you mentioned such a great point is that they can definitely explore with a lot more colors, all the way to the fingerboard, sotasto, and and just have a lot more vibrato varieties, sound varieties. So great, thank you guys.
We had one more question that came to me earlier on. Somebody was asking, what's the physical toll of playing something like this Beethoven fugue on all of you, or mental?
Ask Feng Ho.
Work out. I didn't do enough.
Well, it's even a bigger workout with a mask on, so it's a less air to breathe. That's exactly how I felt when I was watching. It's like it takes such a stamina, this piece, physically and mentally.
Yeah, I guess I have one quick follow-up question on that point. As a quartet, you rely so much on a certain kind of communication besides just movement, but just reading each other's expressions, and how much of that's impacted by the fact that you only see eyes?
I think that
Actually, that's what I always look at. Is always eyes or hands more than what I'm saying. Yeah, is usually.
I feel like the
for Gabe for Blaise. Gabe is our son. Sorry.
Well, I think you guys should try masks and sunglasses, and we can still play together.
When I was in school, we used to my quartet of friends and I experimented a little bit with turning the lights off in the room and turning our chairs around so that we had our backs to each other, just to see what that would do for our listening. With what we're doing right now, I kind of feel like the distancing that we are trying to maintain presents more of a challenge than the face covering of the mask itself, just in terms of, as Marie said, it's more about watching hands, for me, watching bows to try to be together, watching eyes. So to me, the mask doesn't make a huge difference visually, but the distancing, I think we all feel more constrained in how we have to play and how we have to listen to each other compared to what we've been used to for the past 15 years of our interaction together.
Sure.
Every foot you add, you can't hear the chords as well. You can't hear the intonation as well. I mean, it's amazing how much a little more difference changes the listening.
Yeah, it's not even that much more spread out than usual, but 12 inches makes a difference in terms of the detail and the nuance of what you're hearing.
I totally believe that. Absolutely. And I also saw you guys are all using tablets now. And how long have you been doing that?
2 to 3 years. Marie was the first one to pick that up, and one by one we all kind of caved into it, and I think we all basically swear by it at this point. It's a pretty hefty startup cost, but definitely it affords a lot of capability that is just really limited by having the paper and pencil in front of you and turning pages, and just to have your whole music library on a tablet is a pretty remarkable opportunity.
Absolutely. I mean, for something like fugue, you guys have lived for so long. I see that you played off your parts, but if you were to learn a new quartet, do you sometimes play off a score, since you have the technology of page turns and instead of just coming out of your own part?
Yeah, it's much more flexible that way to work some of that into your real-time rehearsing.
Yeah. Yes. So any more questions? Well, I just want to thank you guys so much for joining us tonight. And, when we booked this concert for tonight, and I could have sworn I thought nothing was going to happen tonight except just us,
Just another, lazy Saturday evening.
That's right.
There's actually cheering going on outside our window.
We heard some fireworks as well. So,
the entire broadcast, including the introduction and the Q&A, is being posted for some people to be watching after as well. And this will be available for everybody who's attending tonight for the next 48 hours.
Oh, we have one more question, actually. So it's a very good question. Questions from for the quartet. Have you done other Zoom watch party style concerts before? What does it feel like to join a concert as an audience member, and how do you get used to that? It's like an out-of-body experience, watching yourself playing.
I was way more nervous watching than playing.
I hear you. Yes. Yes.
I have to be
I'm not kidding.
Yes. Oh, it's like, you know, when Winston and I we've done a few times, and after we feel like we feel like we played the concert, and then we always order pizza to celebrate after. It's like a workout sitting here.
Maybe one last question before we wrap it up. What did you think about performing at the Unity Temple?
It's an amazing space. I mean, you know, I think you can tell how important music was to Frank Lloyd Wright, and how, you know, in his buildings, especially that one, and, you know, in his home and studio, he was sort of attuned to the idea of what would it be like to have music happening in this space, just everything from the sight lines to the, I don't know, just something about the proportions of the room, and the size of the room, and the height of the ceiling. Everything just kind of feels like the perfect fit for the chamber music space. The restoration that has gone on there is extraordinary. We played in there a couple of times pre-restoration, and it obviously needed a little tender loving care, and the work that went into it was really phenomenal. And what, you know, to have you guys running a series there and sort of making use of it in the optimal way for presenting live music there, or in this case pre-recorded music, but, you know, just to bring chamber music back to that space is really the absolute perfect fit. And we are thrilled that you guys are doing it, and we're happy to be a part of it, and yeah, grateful for everything the foundation has done and for what you guys have done to get this series going again.
Well, thank you very much. We'd like to thank you, the Avalon Quartet, for such a magnificent evening, and thank you to our audience for tuning in. And we'd also like to thank Heidi Rulli-May for being the executive director of the series and doing so much work and all of your support.
We're really lucky to have her to make all this happen. So, yes, and again, thank you so much for the wonderful evening of music and fun conversation, and we hope to bump into you again someplace.
I'm sure we will.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.
You are making music. Have a good night.
Good night, everybody.
Good night, everybody.
Bye, folks.